Welcome back to Monster Tamer, a 2D Pokemon-like RPG created Phaser 3. Previously, we worked on refactoring our logic tied to our NPCs, and we added in a new event structure so we can do more advanced things like adding in cutscenes and allowing our NPCs to do things like heal our player. If you missed the previous videos, there'll be links in the video descriptions of source code up to this point, as well as complete source code for this video. There will also be links to previous videos if you'd like to catch up. So let's get started. So now we wrapped up our logic tied to our NPC and our new event structure. What we're going to do next is we're going to take a look at how we can add a feature for allowing our monsters to level up and gain stats as they gain experience through battles. And so to see example of what we'll be building, what we're going to do is we're going to update our game to have this new EXP bar. And then as our monsters battle other monsters, they're going to gain experience based on those monsters' levels. And then that's going to go ahead and bump up the overall experience that our monster currently has. Eventually, after enough battles, our monster will have enough experience to go ahead and level up. And so what happens is once we reach that max threshold, our monster is going to go ahead and increase their level. We're going to go ahead and bump it up, and that's also going to go ahead and bump up their stats. And so that's going to have things like bump up our HP, bump up our attack, and different things like that. And then this is going to allow our monsters to get stronger as we progress through our game. So in addition to adding this to our battle scene, we're going to go ahead and update our monster detail screen to also include details about our monster's current experience and how much experience they need to reach the next level. So before we dive into the code, we're going to go ahead and take a quick look at what we'll have to do. And so we're going to go ahead and start off by first doing some refactoring for our EXP bar. And so our EXP bar is going to function very similar to our HP bar. So we're going to move that logic to a shared class that can be reused by both our EXP and our HP bars in our various scenes. Once we finish that, we'll go ahead and create our new EXP bar class. We'll add that to our monster detail scene as well as our battle scenes. Then we'll go ahead and tie all of our logic together for our battle scene and tie that to our monsters. And so we'll add some new properties to go ahead and keep track of this data on our monster class. Then finally, once we have all of that working, we're going to review the math that's tied to actually leveling up in our game, and we'll create some utils to wrap all this functionality. All right, so the first thing we need to do is we need to go ahead and load in our new assets that we'll be using for our EXP bar. And so our new assets are going to be very similar to our HP bar, except they're going to be blue assets. And so we'll have the same pattern. We'll have a left cap, a right cap in the middle. And so for the new assets, there's going to be a link in the description of the video to a direct download. They can also be found on the game assets release page for the Monster Tamer GitHub repository. And so what we'll want to download is the monster level assets zip folder. And inside that zip folder, if you go ahead and download that now, there should be 3 files. This bar horizontal blue, left, mid, and right. And so these are going to make up our EXP bar, very similar to our HP bar. And so what we'll want to do is with those files, we're going to want to go ahead and place those inside our assets folder under under images, Kenny's assets, our UI space expansion, and we're going to go ahead and place them with our other ones for our green health bar. So now we have our new assets. We need to go ahead and load those into our game. So what we'll do is let's start in our asset keys file, and we're going to go ahead and add in our new asset keys for our experience bar. So what we'll do is we're going to come right down where we have our health bar assets here, and let's just go ahead and copy this whole object, and we're going to go ahead and paste this here. And so instead of being health bar, we're just going to do EXP bar, and we don't need the shadows, so we'll reuse the same shadows that we do for our HP for our EXP bar. And so we're just going to go ahead and do EXP left cap, we'll do EXP middle, and we'll do EXP right cap. Let's go ahead and update our values. And then what we'll need to do is jump over to our preload scene, and let's go ahead and load in these new assets. So we'll go ahead and open up our preload scene. We'll come down to where we load our health bar assets. Let's go ahead and just copy those lines of code. We'll go ahead and paste it right below. And we're going to do EXP bar assets. And let's go ahead and update our asset key. So we'll do our EXP bar asset keys. And let's update all 3 of those. And so we're going to have our right cap. We'll have our middle, and then our left. And then for our names, instead of being green, we just need to replace this with blue. So I'm just going to copy that, and we'll update all 3. Let's go ahead and save. So now we have our assets in place. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and refactor our health bar class. And so for our EXP bar, it's going to be very similar to our HP bar. We're just going to use some slightly different assets, and we're also going to change the size a little bit. But for the main functionality, it's going to work exactly the same. We're going to have a bar that's going to have a min and max value, and then we want to display our bar percentage based on how full we are. And we want to go ahead and have that animate as we bump up that value. So we're like health, if we increase our health, this would animate up. With our EXPs, we gain experience. This would go ahead and animate up as well. So go ahead and do that. Let's go ahead and jump over to our code. And what we'll do is let's come into our common folder. All right, so what we'll do is we're going to go ahead and add a new file, and we're going to go ahead and call this animated bar. And so this is going to be a new class, and it's going to be mostly the same as our old health bar class. And so we'll do animated bar JS, and then let's go ahead and open up our health bar JS file. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to copy all of the code from our health bar into our animated bar. And then what we'll need to do is update our reference paths. And then what we'll need to do is update our import paths. And so this will be one folder up. And so let's go ahead and remove those. All right, so what we want to do with our class is we want to go ahead and change all of our references from our health bar to be more generic. And so we'll start with our class name. And so we're going to do animated bar. And then as an example, like we have this health bar container here. And we want this to be generic. So we're just going to change this to be container. And so we'll need to update all those references in our code. Besides that, we want to update all of our private properties here to go ahead and be protected because we'll need to reference these both inside our health bar and our exp bar classes. And so for our protected properties, we're just going to go ahead and prefix these with an underscore, and then we're going to go ahead and add the annotation for protected. And so I'm just going to copy this here and add that to our various types. And then we'll go ahead and change all these to have our underscore. All right, then we need to go ahead and update our references through our code. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to do a search. I'm going to do a search for this and then our protected property. And I'm going to go ahead and just replace all of those with this and then underscore. And so in theory, what that should do is update all of our properties. It also update our methods. So we'll want to go ahead and change those as well. So what we'll do is we'll have our create health bar. We'll go ahead and make that protected as well. And let's do that for our other methods as well. So I have create health bar images. We'll do our set meter percentage, our update health bar game objects, and then we have our one public one here. All right. So then what we'll do is I'm just going to go ahead and add the protected property to these as well. All right, and then what we need to do is anytime we have a reference to health, we want to make that more generic. So I'm just going to do a search for health bar, and I'm going to change this to be animated bar. So that should go ahead and update our comments in our code. And then let's go ahead and just search for health. All right, and so we have health bar container. Let's change that to container. We'll update our references. And so we'll have container, container, and we'll do update bar game objects. So we'll update our method name and our references. Go ahead and update that reference here. All right, let's update these two method names. We'll do create bar shadow images, and we'll do create bar images. All right, so our only references now is to our health bar assets. So what we need to do now is we need to update our constructor to expect a configuration that'll be specific to the type of bar we want to create. So instead of manually specifying our health bar assets here inside our various methods, we want to pass in the asset we want to use for this animated bar. And so for our health bar class, we would pass in those assets that we used previously. And then for our new exp bar class, we'd pass in our new exp assets we just loaded. And so to do this, we're going to go ahead and remove all of our arguments from our constructor here. And we're just going to add a new one called config. And so for our config, this is going to be a new type we'll go ahead and create. And it's going to have all these values as property on it, as well as some more, such as our assets. So let's go ahead and jump up to the top of our class. We'll add that in real quick. And so what we'll do is let's add a new type definition. And so we'll do at type def. And so we're going to call this animated bar config. And our type is going to be an object. And so then on our object, we'll have our various properties. So I'm just going to copy these here. I'm going to bring them up here. And we'll go ahead and fix that. And so we will, instead of param, this is going to be a property on our object. Just go ahead and update this. And so we'll have our scene, our X, our Y. We'll have our width. And we're not going to make this optional with a default value. Instead, we're going to expect this to be provided by our various classes. Our various implementations. And so we'll have width. All right, then real quick, let's jump back down to our constructor. We'll go ahead and fix our type definition here. And so for this, we're going to have our config, and this is going to be our animated bar config. And so I'm going to update our references. And so we will have our scene will be equal to our config scene. Our width will be equal to our config width. And then we'll do the same thing for our X and Y values. So let's go ahead and copy this. And we're just going to go ahead and place that in front of these. So we'll have our config X and Y. All right, and then what we'll want to do now is we need to go ahead and update our config up here to go ahead and have the other properties we'll need. So a good example is our scaling here. We had this hard-coded before in our health bar class. We'll want to expect that as part of our config. And so what we'll do is we're going to do config, and we'll do scale Y. And let's go ahead and add that up to our configuration. So I'm going to go ahead and copy this here and paste it. And so then we'll do scale Y. All right, so the next we'll need to go ahead and add in properties for our assets. And so we'll have our 3 main assets for our display and our 3 main assets for the shadow that goes under our bar. All right, and so what I'm going to do real quick is I'm going to go ahead and paste over some properties. And so for our properties, what we're basically doing is we're just adding in our asset keys. So we have our left cap asset key, our middle asset key, right asset key, and then also our shadows associated with those. And then one last change we want to do is for our scale Y, we're going to go ahead and add a default value to this. And then that way it's optional if we pass this in. All right, and so now we have our new configuration. What we want to do is we need to store a reference that into our class, so then that way down in our other methods, we can reference it. So what we'll do is let's add one more new property, and so we'll have it protected, and we are going to call this config. I'll go ahead and copy this here. We'll go ahead and paste it. And we'll go ahead and update our type. And so this will be our animated bar config. Then what we'll do is after we do our scale, let's just do our this. We'll do config will be equal to config. So let's go ahead and jump down to our methods where we're creating our game objects. So what we'll want to do is grab these from our config. And so we'll have config. So we'll have this, we'll have our config, and we're going to have our left shadow cap asset key. Let's just copy this, and let's go ahead and update it here. And so we have our middle shadow, and we'll have our right cap shadow. All right, and then let's come down to where we create our bar images, and we'll do the same thing. And so we have our left cap. So we'll just have our left cap asset key, middle asset key, and we'll have our right cap asset key. So now that we have our core logic for our animated bar class in place, what we need to do next is we need to refactor our health bar class to go ahead and extend our animated bar class and actually use that. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to go ahead and create a new class inside our common folder here. We're just going to call this health bar. And the reason I'm doing that is our health bar is actually used in multiple locations right now. And so it doesn't make sense for it to actually be located under our battle subfolder here. It's used in various scenes, and so we'll go ahead and move it to common. And so then what we'll do is we're just going to export our new class. We're going to export class. Let's do health bar. And we're going to extend our animated bar. And then so what we'll do is we'll do our constructor. And so for our constructor, we'll need the scene we're adding it to, our X and Y positioning, as well as our width. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to come to our health bar class right now. I'm just going to copy our constructor here, and we'll reuse most of that logic. So we'll go ahead and paste that. And then so what we'll do is we're just going to call our super method. And so we'll do super. And so for our configuration, let's add in our values. And so we'll have our scene, we'll have X, we'll have Y, we're going to have our width, and then we'll have our scale Y, and we'll want this to be 0.7. And then we'll have our left asset key. And so this is going to be our health bar asset keys, and it's going to be our left cap. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to remove all this logic here. Copy this line of code, and we'll go ahead and paste it so we have our 6 assets. All right, so after our left asset key, we'll have our left shadow. Let's do our mid. So we'll have our middle asset key, our middle shadow asset key, our right, and then our right shadow. And now, so we need to update our values, and so we're going to have our left cap shadow, middle shadow, and then we'll have our right, and our right shadow. All right, so now we have our new health bar class. Let's go ahead and jump over to our other health bar class, and we're gonna go ahead and delete that. And then what we'll need to do is we'll need to update references in our code where we're using our health bar. Let's go ahead and jump over to our battle monster class. And so let's go ahead and update our health bar reference. And so instead of being under UI, it's going to be up one more folder, and that's gonna be under common. And then we need to go ahead and update the same reference inside our monster party scene. So we'll have monster party. And so inside here, this is going to be under common and then health bar. All right, and so real quick, what we need to do is let's go back to our health bar class. We need to go ahead and fix our imports. So we need to make sure we have our .js extension. And one last change we need to do is in our animated bar class, because we want this to be an abstract class, we're going to add our check to our config to make sure we're not creating an instance of this directly, kind of like what we did with our other abstract classes. And so to do that, we're just going to have an if statement. We're going to do if this constructor equals our animated bar class. Then we want to go ahead and just throw a new arrow. So we do throw new error. And we're just going to do animated bar is an abstract class and cannot be instantiated. All right, so with all our changes in place, let's go ahead and test our code. If we jump over to our browser, what we should see is our game should load up without any issues. We shouldn't see any errors in our console log. And then what we'll do is let's go ahead and do new game. And real quick, let's go ahead and go into our monster. So we can see in our monster party scene here, we see our health bar without any issues. Perfect. And then what we'll do is let's go ahead and go into our battle scene real quick. We'll make sure everything's functioning. All right, so we see when our enemy appears, their health bar appears, our health bar appears. Perfect. And let's go ahead and just do an attack. And we can see that our health bar is still animating properly. All right, with that brings this video to an end. In our next video, we're going to work on creating our new EXP bar class, and we'll work on updating our UIs to have this new EXP bar. So as a reminder, there's a link in the description of the video to the clear source code for this video, and as always, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the content. If you did enjoy the video, please consider liking the video and hitting the bell icon to be notified when the next video in the series is released. For more great Phaser 3 content, please see the links on your screen now.